Hello and welcome to this CenterCode training video talking about providing information and resources to your users. We're going to talk about the various types of content and uses for it. So this one's actually going to be a bit more process oriented. It's not going to be quite as focused on the concepts, but we're actually going to dig in and show the process of creating distributed values or modifying text and providing information to your testers. So in this video, you'll learn how to present information to your beta community, and also we're going to talk about some common uses for the content tool. In the Viridian Community Story, this is primarily a toolbox consideration. This is going to be something you're going to need to have under your belt whenever you get into the launch steps. You're going to be creating content on the fly. You're going to want to set some things up beforehand. So this is something you definitely want to have a handle on before you start moving forward. Now, the content tool allows you to categorize your resources, basically. So you can choose from different groups and group them accordingly. You can control access via those dynamic roles that we covered in previous videos. Effectively, you're generating custom and secured documents. As mentioned before, you can also create these resources on the fly, but you can actually create these content pieces in advance and then choose their activation and deactivation dates so that they'll automatically activate and deactivate according to whatever schedule you have for your beta program. Some common uses for content include just providing general information, updates, notifications, etc. You can also distribute user-specific data, being access keys, incentives, customer meetings, etc. And finally, you can also use content to store secured files for embedding elsewhere in your beta program. So if you have video or images or something of that nature that you want to refer to throughout your correspondence, or you want to link it to somewhere in your community, you can actually upload them to content, have them secured there, and just simply call on those URLs to embed them into your documentation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into community content, and we'll explain what we're going to do. So within the community configuration screen, go ahead and click on content, and from here you can see the interface corresponding to the content management. So we have our different groups, our different content types here, being utility images, community news, and getting started. Now within the last two you have some documents here, but we're actually going to create a new one. So in the Viridian Dynamic Story, we're actually going to start kicking off our beta program here in the next month or so. As such, we want to notify our users that we'll be kicking off a new beta phase, and we'll be providing them with a Phase 1 access key to use for various software and hardware they're going to be testing in our beta program. So in that case, let's go ahead and click on New Content, and we're actually going to create some new content under the Community News heading. Once you get loaded up on that screen, go ahead and scroll down for a little bit of space, and we're going to add a title. Now for the body area, I actually have some text that was provided to me. It was templated text that we're going to use for this correspondence. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in, and then we're actually going to go through and modify it using the WYSIWYG text editor to add some formatting and some structure to that information. Now I'm going to go ahead and speed through this a little bit as I change the text and all that, and then we're actually going to dig into dynamic tags after that. Okay, there we go. Now scroll down. We're actually going to insert a dynamic tag here. See where it says first name? I actually want that to be dynamically generated for the individual viewing the piece of content. So I'm going to highlight first name, scroll down to the dynamic tags, and choose the appropriate values. Click Insert at Cursor, and there you go. So now we have that finished documentation. That information there is all formatted and looks good. Now we're actually going to jump down to the Distributed Values section. Click on that link to expand the menu, and then click on Create a new distributed value type. Give it an appropriate title, in this case Phase 1 access codes. And from the distribution method, we're actually going to choose Automatically Assigned. If, for instance, I had a list of users and their appropriate codes and it was predetermined, I would actually use Pre-Assigned, and I would assign each individual code to its respective user. But in this case, I just want it to be automatically assigned when they log in. For the Values field, I have a document of keys corresponding to the Phase 1 access codes, so I'm going to go ahead and paste those in, one line at a time. There we go, and for these other options, I'm going to go ahead and leave them the same. I do want one value per user, so I'm going to go ahead and just click Submit. So now we have our documentation. We've also got that distributed value set there, and in that interface you can modify to add extras. You can choose to assign particular values to particular users, or you can just see how many were distributed and how many are still available. The next section is the availability section. It allows you to fill out a particular date range that you want this piece of content to be available to your users. You can set a start and an end date, but in this case I'm just going to go ahead and activate and deactivate this piece of content whenever I see fitting. The next section is the Team Access block. It allows you to modify who has that dynamic role access to this piece of content. In this case, I'm not quite ready to distribute this information to my testers, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the View checkboxes for the members and community managers. On the right hand side there you have that Notice column, and that's going to be covered in a future video specifically about notices. So in this case, just leave these values blank and submit. There you have it. You can see our new piece of content, testing to resume in June. The View Access column on the right hand side there displays which teams have full access to those individual resources. So when I want to come back into the content tool and activate this piece of content for my testers, I can simply click on their corresponding icon for their team type to turn on the access roles for that entire team type. So in this case, the participant now has access to this particular piece of content. If I want to remove access, I simply click it again to remove all role access from it. Alternately, I can also go on the right hand side there with that active checkbox and check that on or off if I want to activate or deactivate the entire piece of content itself. To view this piece of content from within Connect and not as a user, I can simply click on the view icon on the left hand side there and see what that's going to look like for each of my testers. So in this video we covered presenting information using content and formatting that information. We also talked about a couple of common uses for the content tool, including providing access codes, simple documentation, storing media files within content. Of course, we've got some more videos coming up covering various tools within Connect, so stay tuned.